Mark and Jade, welcome to the Cameron Brooks podcast. It's great to have you guys here. I appreciate you coming here to tell your story and about how, Mark, you launched your career search and found the opportunity you were looking for at NextEra. And Jade, of course, the impact that had on your career, because you had a great career as well, and had a great career coming into this and continue to do so. And we want to just share that story with our listeners on the importance of Jade's career, a spouse, as well as how you guys managed this transition together. And just to be clear, Mark is the military officer, Jade, civilian with a great career. And we've had podcasts in the past about how dual military officers have made the transition, but this one's about how a military officer, Mark in this case, with a spouse who also had the professional career, and how you guys navigated that through this process. So thanks for being here. And I know it's a quick turnaround. You guys are moving soon. You have a young family, lots of changes for you. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, definitely excited to be here. Thanks for having us. Yeah, definitely excited to share our story, I guess.
Excellent. Very good. So Mark, why don't you give the listeners a bit of a background on your military experience, your military background, the reason you made the transition or decided to leave the military, and where you're headed to next.
So, a little background for the military. I'm an Army officer. I've always had it kind of in my plan to leave the military after about 4 years. That was my initial service obligation. And we had always kind of had this plan to move on eventually. We weren't really sure when that would be. But I knew I wanted to join the corporate world and really just work for the things that I had dreamed of when I was in college getting my degree. And that initial job search, just coming from just my own job search, was tough. So we both kind of looked at Tampa as an option, and we were struggling, and I had some opportunities, but they weren't really the ones I wanted. They were more SME based. And Jade had known that her work was going to send her to Tampa as well and open a branch. And we were looking around. I was struggling. And then finally, one of Jade's friends reached out to her and let her know that Cameron Brooks was an awesome option, that they had gotten one of her friends a position. So I reached out, and that kind of led in one thing into another, and eventually I ended up getting an awesome job with NextEra through Cameron Brooks, and we're going to be now moving to South Florida with a great opportunity that I was given, and we're really excited. We couldn't be more excited.
And Jade, why don't you tell the listeners about your career? Obviously, that's a big part of your transition and your decision making as well. So let's love for you to share the listeners about what you do and your future.
Yeah, so I am a supervisor of a mass tort department for a law firm, a local law firm that is trying to grow and branch out. We had told them that we were really wanting to move to Florida. We had zoned in on Tampa, and we were just really dead set on getting there. So they had mentioned to me that they wanted me to open up an office there, and that they could make it happen. So they started looking at offices there. They started putting roots down there, getting all the paperwork started to start an office in Tampa. So we had our eyes set on there pretty heavily. When we opened up the option to not go to Tampa, I was really nervous. I actually didn't think it was a choice. I was scared to talk to my supervisor, but I brought it up to her, the owner, and she was okay with it. The idea of branching out elsewhere, and I wouldn't have thought to ask her if we didn't have Cameron Brooks.
So what ended up happening? What will you do now that Mark's going to Juno Beach and it's not Tampa?
So the goal is that we are still going to open an office. They're not opening one in Tampa anymore. They are going to go where we're going. We're going to live about 45 minutes from Juno Beach. So they're going to open up an office somewhere near where we live, and then I will help open it up, help run it. They just have to start the paperwork and get an office there now, but the goal is to open it up by the end of the year.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Not everybody is probably as fortunate where a company would work with them with that much flexibility. We understand that, but I remember, I believe it was January. I think it was January. It was because I remember being dark. It was in the evening.
Yeah.
We were the three of us were on the phone talking about this transition and timeline. And you initially came to us, Mark, with the Tampa being on that profile. That's where you'd like to be, and you, as you mentioned, you'd been having some challenges finding the type of work that you were looking for. And Tampa's a big city. There's a lot going on there, but there's, it's like any other city. Not all companies in that area hire junior officers and are going to have developmental roles when that person gets out. It makes it harder. And we had that dialogue. And I think there was a decision that you and Jade had to make about um, does Jade pivot from Tampa to exploring other options? What was it that caused you to make the decision that, okay, we don't need to lock in Tampa. Let's broaden this.
So I guess a lot of it was we knew I wanted to really grow outside of the military, and you guys really helped explain that first step is vital because if you jump into the wrong position at the wrong company, I might not like it, and then I'm bouncing around again. And once Jade spoke to the owners of the law firm, obviously they were flexible with where they would move a branch, so she would still have potential to be able to grow within her company. But worst case, they were allowing a work from home as well at her current position. Mm-hmm. So we would be able to maneuver wherever we needed to with what position I got through Cameron Brooks. So at that point, we decided, okay, Jade does like what she does right now, and she'd be okay with continuing at that same position without opening her own branch. Obviously, perfect scenario, which we ended up getting, she's able to do that, but we would prefer for me to find that job that I know that I'm going to like and going to be able to develop with for the long term, right out of the military, instead of having that bouncing around like many do. And once I saw that was going to be an issue when I was looking in Tampa, like I said, I had options, but they weren't the right job. I mean, some interviews I had, I was like, hey, so the person I'm replacing, will they still be like around? And they're like, yeah, they've been in the position for 10 years. They're moving on. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't necessarily want to be in the same position for 10 years when I first got out of the military. So it was definitely a learning experience for us. And I'm glad we took the step.
What would you say was the greatest benefit for both of your careers by broadening outside of Tampa, allowing Mark to do a broader search? I mean, still, obviously, Jade's career was in consideration, right? Which we haven't mentioned. You gave us a group of cities that we had to work with. I think I should have mentioned that these are the places that you guys could go.
Yeah.
But what was the biggest benefit? I know you found the right role that you were looking for, but the biggest benefit for you two, both of your careers, by broadening?
I think being a little just more open. The first thing we thought of as we were getting out of the military, the whole process was where are we going to live? And I think that might be a common thought with JMOs getting out and their spouses. But once we were able to broaden our options, not only was I able to find the position I wanted, but I was able to compare as well. And I didn't have that comparing factor just looking in Tampa. And Jade even, I mean, we love Tampa, but now we found that we love a place even more. We definitely are moving to a place that we like even more than Tampa, Florida.
Like
so,
a more family friendly.
More family friendly. And it just presented a lot more options than we realized that were out there. Like I said, a good experience overall.
So the power of the comparisons, not just landing in the right job, but being able to compare options was really beneficial for you as well.
Definitely. And yeah, when you're looking on your own, you can't compare. You have one job interview now, and then you have one later, but you never have 9-10 interviews lined up where you can then go travel and see these different cities and let your spouse know, hey, I think this is one for us, and then make your decision. It's not something you normally run into.
Jade, you mentioned earlier some of the things that you were feeling about uneasiness. That's some, I don't think you used that word when you went to your boss. How are you feeling from like January, from that conversation all the way to the end of April? Can you walk us through like your experience? Because it's not just you have a family, you're moving. You also have a really important career that's going very well. That this law firm is asking you to go help them open up an office.
Yeah, so Tampa was pretty much dead set. I was really uneasy going to my boss and kind of mentioning it. I only did it so that Mark had options, or better options, I suppose. I just kind of presented what was going on. And it's definitely not something I would have normally done. Normally, this is what's happening, this is what we're going to do, and it happens. But he just explained to me all that it could lead to, all the benefits of Cameron Brooks. So I had a brief discussion. It seemed like it went well. So I continued on, and I told her, like, we made a map of the places that we would consider. Here they are. She let me know the places that she would open another office. And then she said, worst, if you guys find a place that you really love, you can work remotely. So that was nice. But career-wise, after she said that we could move anywhere, I was just pretty much pumped. I haven't been in the works for the bigger picture yet, just because we were having a baby. So I have not been able to help her look for the office or been part of the bigger planning just yet. But it was just like a relief, a weight lifted off my shoulder when she said that she would consider it.
How did it go when you went back to your boss to share with her you're going to the Juneau Beach area?
She was so excited. We just actually had this conversation. She still thought we were going to be closer to Tampa. I don't know if she wasn't listening or whatever, but whenever she realized where we were, she was like, wow, that's a better location than Tampa. That's a great area. Like, she's super excited. Some of our office up here actually wants to move down and open this office with me. So I think we're going to have 2 or 3 people come down, help me open this office. So it's opening up other people's choices to, like, yeah, giving them opportunities to expand and grow and get out of where they were born. So they're super excited. So it didn't just benefit me, but it did benefit other people as well.
And I will say, I think another just stressor through the whole process for Jade, with all of the what ifs in the air, was also that, I mean, she was 9 months pregnant during the conference, and we ended up having the baby right after the conference. So, you know, it's a lot going on, but it all happens fast enough where you're able to still know that final decision and still choose that position after you go through your second interviews and all that stuff. So it was a stressful process, but overall really successful, and just an awesome time.
What do you think it would have taken for you to land the quality and the caliber of the role that you did at NextEra by continuing to focus on Tampa?
I don't think I would have gotten a developmental position that I did, just from the experience I had with the interviews that I had done. I think I would have had a comparable pay, maybe even a little higher of pay by very small amounts, but I would have been stuck with that pay range and that position for multiple years, between 3 to 7 years, maybe like I said, maybe even 10, because a lot of positions were subject matter expert positions, and they weren't looking at a leader at the time. They were looking to fill a gap in a specific department, rather than looking for someone to grow with their organization and eventually become a high level leader. So I don't think I would have had the same success at all. I would have found something, we would have made it work, of course, but I definitely, it's hard to explain everything that Cameron Brooks gives at once, but yeah, I would not have found that role that I got with NextEra.
So let's kind of walk through for both of you. Jade, let's start with you. What was your involvement with Mark's career search process and input into some of the decisions from, say, the conference through the follow-up interview process that helped you as a family, but also your career as well?
I feel like I had to be like really relaxed and kind of go with the flow. Usually, I can get really in my head about what's going on, and I kind of took a step back, really. I put my full faith into what Mark was doing. I worked from home at that point, so I kind of heard all of his interviews and the conference itself. So I mean, I listened to those. I wouldn't.
I guess she was really mainly a sounding board for me.
Yeah.
Because we already agreed to all the locations, and that was the thing. So we had the 9 locations, and when we had to go look at all the yeses and where I was going to do a second interview at, really, she just gave me like things to look at while I was there. Maybe you could like things I'd like think about while I was talking to others.
Yeah, you're probably gonna want to edit this out, but truthfully, I was kind of like a backseat driver. I put all of my faith into Mark, and I was just like, I want you to find a career that you're passionate about. I want you to find what you like. Obviously, we had already picked the places that we wanted to go. So I just wanted him to find something that was his dream, his passion. So I was his support. I was there for him. But I tried not to get too in my head on where we were going to be, because I knew we had already chose really good locations. We would have been happy with wherever we went. So I just had to kind of let go and support him so that he could, really focus on finding a good job for him, for us, and a great location for us as well. So I feel like from those interviews, I was your support system.
Yeah.
I was there for you, a crutch to lean on. And it helped me
helped visualize, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
I think the theme there is you guys had talked ahead of time.
Definitely.
And so I think whether people decide this is the strategy, this is the theme that I just took away, that I think that I would ought to pull all the way through to other people who are listening to this, is that you guys had a conversation before the whole process started. We had the conversation, you guys kind of when took some time, you came back, but before we get into February, a couple months before the conference, there's a conversation. What is our strategy? What is our goal? Actually, great career for Mark and a place where you can open up an office. Then the strategy is, okay, it can be these locations. Now, not everybody will need to pick 9 locations, but I can often dual career spouses, or even my wife decided not to work when we left, but there was a clear goal and strategy that was discussed and agreed upon. But I can't tell you how many people I work with that come all the way through. We think there's a strategy, we think there's a discussion, they get offers in the follow-up process, and they're confused. They don't know how to make the decision because the strategy has not been discussed and agreed upon prior to starting the process. That's what I hear you guys did that made your career search so successful. Wouldn't you say that that's part of it?
Yeah, definitely. We had to stop our vision in Tampa. We had to kind of let that go for the time being, and we had to be open with each other, open with our thoughts, and visualize a life where of greater opportunities would happen, and we couldn't just zone in on one area. We had to just broaden it out, really. So as soon as Mark's really go with the flow, I had to really let go and visualize a life somewhere other than Tampa. So that was kind of hard, but as soon as we came to an agreement and he discussed these are the perks, this is what this opportunity could bring us. Once we had that discussion and I was open to it, we had that agreement and kind of worked out, we were on the same page.
I just wanted to encourage I think this is good for people who are single, people who are significant others, people who are engaged, people who are married. Whether somebody whose spouse is real supportive, listen, I'll let you lead, or somebody's spouse, this is equal, 100%. Because a lot of spouses, it's equally, the career is like, I've got to have all of these things as well. I think the pull through here is have a strategy and talk and get this all together before you start executing. You would do the same thing you would do in the military, right? You would never execute a strategy before it was agreed upon with other people and other people that are involved, so that everybody knows what's happening, because you're more likely to reach your goals. And this is the case, and why we have you here as guests is that you guys reached your goals. And I wasn't even expecting this to be a part of the podcast. That big reason why you guys got your goals was, yes, part of it was pivoting off of one location. But what I'm pulling through is there were conversations about, this is what we want, this is what's important to us, and this is the strategy to get there.
Yeah.
And I think it's very early on in the Cameron Brooks process, but you have us ask questions with our spouse, answer some questions with our spouses, like, what are your goals? What do you want in 5 years? Like those basic things. You just have that discussion with obviously yourself, but also your spouse, especially when your spouse has a job that also she'd like to continue. It's very important to have those together, so then you understand what are our true goals, not what we're thinking about right when we get out of the military. Because a lot of times you get that short-sighted vision when you just get out. You're like, oh, I want my job, I want this location, I want these things that I couldn't have before being in the military. But we realized what the true goal was, and that was to find something that I would love to grow with, and then that we could also keep what she's doing at this time, which is something that she loves to do.
Yeah. In the beginning, honestly, I remember I felt like my job wasn't as important as his. I felt like he was coming across that way at first, just because he was like, well, I can do all this with my career. And I was like, well, I already have this plan with my boss. And I truthfully was too scared to talk to my boss. I was like, we already have it in the works. We already have a plan. We're already going to Tampa. And I was pretty much dead set on not having this be a thing. You don't know until you ask. Can I work remote? Can I open an office somewhere a couple hours away? So it did work out for us, but it wouldn't have if I wasn't open to it.
We practiced that conversation too.
We did.
So,
we did practice that conversation.
It's key.
And I just want to be clear with our listeners that from my perspective, I don't want any listener to think that this is about prioritizing the junior officer's career. This is about, they're both important, but how can you support one another to both reach your career goals? And there are instances, we see it all the time. There are instances that it makes sense to pick a location and they've got to go there. I've seen spouses get into medical schools, or spouses get into residencies, or they're barred in certain areas. There are instances where that makes sense. But when there is flexibility, when there is the option, by allowing the junior officer, the officer who's making the transition, to broaden more off of just one location, one city, when that's there, you end up creating so many more options. And what Mark said was, you get the opportunity to explore the marketability, compare options, and let's see where this goes.
Oh, yes. And I was so fortunate to get an offer from NextEra, and I ended up choosing NextEra, number one, because of their reach. They're in 50 states. It's a large company, and a company that I didn't have an opportunity to interview with before I got an opportunity with Cameron Brooks. And they wanted to develop me as a leader. They're putting me in a senior project management position where I get to go travel, to different states and speak with different county, permitting and speak with, farmers and really do a lot of these things that I wanted to do, which is go out, be a leader and make a difference within a company. And I have that room for growth now. There's a clear growth path. And obviously the great benefits as well. But I was able to get all those things as well as a great location because we sent them our map. It was one of the first things we did with Cameron Brooks. We developed our map, and Florida was a green zone for us, and we had quite a few green states. But we were able to still get in a state that we really wanted to be in, and it made the decision very, very easy for me. And I think that's what really how we settled on it was just too many pros and very few cons.
Did you ever imagine you would end up at a alternative energy company, the type of position you're in?
Absolutely not. And the crazy thing is I had multiple alternative energy interviews too, which is amazing. It's something that my degree can definitely understand too. Being a supply chain major, we talked a lot about alternative energy throughout the years. But I was able to get 2 awesome alternative energy interviews, and then now I'm working with NextEra, a position that's going to be able to help the future of America. And that was another one of my big wants with Cameron Brooks, is to find a company that I could really make a difference in, and I was able to find that, luckily.
Well, Mark and Jade, I want to thank you for being here and sharing your story, and I remember that January night all the way to today. I guess we're about 5 months, a little over 5 months later. Here we are, success story. So thank you for trusting in Cameron Brooks, and thanks for coming back and telling your story.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Having us.
Yeah, and thanks for everything on the way.
Definitely.
Thank you for all the help.